In a world of endless streaming, some masterpieces have fallen through the cracks, waiting to be rediscovered. These 10 films feel as fresh and relevant as ever. Let me show you why these forgotten classics deserve a second look. I had always heard about The Red Shoes, but nothing prepared me for what I witnessed. Let me tell you, this 1948 masterpiece isn't just another ballet film. It's a fever dream in Technicolor that grabs you and never lets go. The way Powell and Pressburger use color, it's like they invented a new language of cinema. Every frame burns with passion. And those dance sequences, my God, they're not just beautiful, they're revolutionary, breaking every rule of what was possible in 1948. What strikes me most is how modern it feels. While other films of its era seem trapped in time, The Red Shoes feels like it could have been made yesterday, if filmmakers today had the courage to be this bold. The thing is, most people dismiss it as just another dancing movie, but they're missing the point entirely. This is a raw, psychological journey into the soul of an artist, exploring what we're willing to sacrifice for our art. And that final sequence, well, I won't spoil it, but let's just say it haunted me for weeks. It's criminal that this film isn't mentioned in the same breath as Citizen Kane or Casablanca. If you think you know classic cinema, but haven't experienced this, you're missing out on something extraordinary. There's something haunting about watching Berlin through the eyes of angels, and Wings of Desire captured my soul in ways I never expected, in ways that still linger with me today. Let me take you back to 1987, when Wim Wenders dared to show us a divided Berlin, not through politics or history, but through the eternal gaze of beings who've watched us since the beginning of time. The way it shifts from luminous black and white to sudden bursts of color. It's like watching the world wake up from a dream. What strikes me most is how this film feels more relevant now than ever, in our world of endless digital observation. Aren't we all becoming these angels ourselves? Watching, listening, but never truly connecting? The poetry of everyday life has never been captured quite like this. The whispered thoughts of strangers, the quiet moments of joy and despair. It's like eavesdropping on humanity's soul. And that soundtrack, with Nick Cave performing in that electric scene, my God, it still sends shivers down my spine. People often overlook this masterpiece, thinking it's too artsy or philosophical, but they're missing something profound and deeply human. In a world of quick cuts and constant action, Wings of Desire asks us to slow down, to really look, to really feel. And isn't that what cinema was meant to do? Let me tell you about the coolest noir you've never seen, where Altman took everything we knew about detective films and turned it inside out. Picture this. Elliot Gould, wandering through a sun-soaked 1970s Los Angeles, muttering, "It's okay with me," like a Zen master caught in a conspiracy. This isn't your grandfather's Philip Marlowe. This is something entirely new and strange, yet somehow perfectly right for its time. What kills me is how everyone remembers Chinatown, but somehow forgets this gem where Altman takes Raymond Chandler's world and drops it into the age of hippies and health food. The way Gold moves through scenes, constantly lighting matches and talking to his cat, it's like watching a private eye who stumbled into the wrong decade. And that camera work. My God, the way it floats and drifts like cigarette smoke, never quite settling down. It's pure jazz in motion, loose, improvisational, yet hitting every note perfectly. The whole thing feels like a dream you might have after falling asleep watching old Bogart movies, while listening to John Lennon records. Here's the thing that gets me. In our era of gritty reboots and meta-commentary, this film was doing it all first, and doing it better. It's not just a great detective movie. It's a meditation on what it means to be a moral person in an increasingly immoral world. And somehow, it manages to be funny while doing it. In the quiet hours before dawn, I found myself mesmerized by Le Samouraï, a film that whispers secrets about loneliness in our digital age, even though it was crafted over half a century ago. Picture this. Rain-slicked Parisian streets where Alain Delon glides like a ghost, his face a perfect mask, his movements pure poetry. In our world of constant chatter, his silence screams volumes. Every gesture, every glance, calculated with the precision of a master watchmaker. The way Melville composes each frame, it's pure visual poetry. But what haunts me is how this 1967 film predicted our modern isolation. That sparse apartment, that mechanical routine, it's like scrolling through our phones at 3 a.m. surrounded by millions, yet completely alone. God, that tenseness in the metro sequence, the way it builds without a single word. Pure cinema that makes our modern action scenes look like children playing with toys. And those eyes of Delon reflecting nothing, seeing everything, like security cameras capturing our every move today. Here's the thing that chills me. Melville wasn't just making a crime film, he was painting a portrait of professional solitude that feels more relevant with each passing year. In our age of remote work and digital detachment, we're all becoming samurai in our own right, living by codes we barely understand, in cities that grow colder by the day. First time I watched The Innocents, I made the mistake of viewing it alone, in my darkened apartment, as shadows crept across my walls. What fools we are, thinking old films can't terrify us anymore. Through the pristine black and white photography, director Jack Clayton weaves something sinister, the way sunlight bends wrong in Victorian gardens, the way darkness pools in corners where it shouldn't be. Every frame breathes with unnatural life, making modern horror feel like child's play. In an age of jump scares and gore, this film whispers its terrors, Deborah Kerr's face-reflecting horrors we can't quite see, or perhaps horrors that don't exist at all. The way her sanity unravels like a fine thread caught in candlelight, it's more disturbing than any modern monster. What haunts me most is how the film plays with truth, in our era of fake news and altered reality. Its questions about what's real feel frighteningly current. Those children, those gardens, that sprawling estate, all beautiful on the surface yet rotting from within. Some nights, when I'm scrolling through social media seeing faces that seem too perfect, too innocent, I think about this film's twisted beauty. It's like Clayton peered through time, saw our obsession with surface appearances, and crafted a warning about the darkness that lurks behind our carefully curated masks. Every now and then, a film grabs you by the throat and forces you to confront truths you'd rather forget. Harakiri did that to me. Its stark black and white frames cutting deeper than any blade. You think you know samurai films, all honor and swordplay, but Kobayashi takes those expectations and shatters them like fragile porcelain. Through his lens, that ancient code of Bushido transforms into something terrifyingly familiar. The way corporations demand loyalty, while showing none in return. When Tatsuya Nakadai speaks, his words dripping with controlled fury, I see every worker who's ever been crushed by faceless bureaucracy. The film's geometry, those perfect formal compositions, they're like prison bars containing raw humanity. In our age of corporate downsizing, of endless loyalty tests, this 1962 masterwork feels more prophetic than ever. The way it dissects power, tradition, empty ritual. It's like watching a news report about modern workplace culture, filtered through ancient Japanese aesthetics. What burns in my mind is how Kobayashi turns ceremony into suspense. Each formal bow, each careful gesture becomes charged with electric tension. This isn't just about samurai, it's about every system that demands blind obedience, while preaching hollow virtue. And brother, that story never gets old. Sitting here, in my phone-tracked, Alexa-monitored life, I felt a chill watching the conversation that no modern thriller has matched. Here's Coppola in 1974, predicting our surveillance state before we even dreamed of smartphones. Gene Hackman's surveillance expert Harry Call, moving through rain-soaked San Francisco, his own paranoia seeping through the screen like water through cracks. The way he hunches over his equipment, dissecting snippets of recorded life. It's like watching the first Facebook moderator decades before the job existed. That haunting piano theme, threading through layers of distorted audio. God, the way it mirrors our modern digital static. The endless hum of data collection. Every scene builds like corrupted code, each revelation unspooling like leaked information. What terrifies me most is how this film understood before the internet, before social media, before algorithms, that privacy would become our most precious and fragile possession. The way Harry moves through crowds, always watching, never seen. It's like our own digital ghosts, tracking cookies that follow our every click. In an age where our phones listen, our cameras watch, our data bleeds, this film doesn't just hold up, it feels like a warning we should have heeded. Every time I watch it, I find myself checking my settings, questioning my devices, wondering who's listening to the watchers, who watches the listeners. In the depths of French cinema lies a nightmare so elegant, it makes modern body horror look like child's play. Eyes without a face, drifts through your psyche, like smoke through silk. That mask, dear God, that porcelain mask, floating through shadowed corridors like a ghost in a fashion magazine. The way Franju transforms medical procedures into ballet, surgical steel, gleaming under harsh lights, it's like scrolling through Instagram filters gone terribly wrong. What strikes me now, in our era of face filters and constant self-modification, is how this film saw it coming. Every frame whispers about identity, about the masks we wear, both digital and flesh. The way Edith Scobb moves, each gesture precise yet ethereal, it's like watching a living filter, decades before we became obsessed with perfection. The film's atmosphere seeps into your bones, Maurice Jarre's carnival music playing against clinical horror, creating something that feels like Snapchat gone gothic. In our world of beauty apps and surgical enhancement, this 1960 masterpiece feels less like horror, more like prophecy. Sometimes late at night, scrolling through endless feeds of altered faces, I think about this film's cold elegance, its terrible beauty. Franju wasn't just making horror, he was predicting our modern obsession with perfection, our willingness to sacrifice anything for the perfect selfie. Through the mists of folk horror emerges a tale that echoes louder today than when it first appeared in 1973. The Wicker Man isn't just some dusty cult classic, it's a mirror reflecting our modern tribalism. The way Hardy builds this world, each cheerful song masking deeper dread, it's like watching a perfectly curated social media feed, where something twisted lurks beneath. Christopher Lee's Lord Summerisle, his charm dripping like honey, reminds me of every charismatic influencer, leading their followers down darker paths. Those sun-drenched rituals, those singing villagers. The film's daylit horror feels like scrolling through wellness groups or cryptocurrency forums, where devotion borders on madness. What haunts me most in our age of digital tribes and echo chambers is how perfectly this film captures the seduction of belonging. Edward Woodward's stern policeman, his righteous certainty crumbling, mirrors our own desperate attempts to cling to truth in a world gone sideways. Sometimes at night, deep in Reddit threads or Telegram channels, I think about Summerisle's smiling faces, their absolute conviction. This isn't just about pagans anymore. It's about how belief can blind us, how community can become cage, and how the brightest sunshine can cast the darkest shadows. In the twisted corridors of 1960s cinema lurks a nightmare that crawled straight into our modern anxieties. Frankenheimer's Seconds slithers under your skin and nests there permanently. Those warped camera angles, those suffocating close-ups, watching it feels like scrolling through filtered lives on social media, where everyone's gotten their second chance at perfection. Rock Hudson's transformed businessman, wandering through his new reality, God, it's like watching someone trapped in their own curated online persona. James Wong Howe's lens bends reality, making mundane offices writhe with menace, while that organization promises reinvention. Like every lifestyle guru flooding your feed. The way the film peers into identity, into the cost of transformation, it's like watching a Black Mirror episode decades before we understood digital reinvention. What chills me most, in our era of endless self-improvement, is how this film saw it coming. The desperate need to become someone else, the corporate packaging of personal reinvention, it's all here, screaming at us from 1966. I think about this film's cold warning, about how the promise of transformation can become its own kind of prison, and how a second chance might just be another form of surrender. And there it is, a journey through cinema's darkest, most thought-provoking corners, where the past meets the present in the most unsettling ways. These films aren't just relics of a bygone era, they're warnings, prophecies, and reflections of the world we're living in today. The more we change, the more we see that some things never truly evolve. If this dive into cinema's chilling brilliance got you thinking, be sure to check out more on Vintage Verse. From timeless classics to forgotten gems, we're all about exploring the films, stories, and moments that shaped the world of yesterday and continue to influence us today. So, hit that subscribe button, join the conversation, and let's keep unearthing the hidden treasures of the past. See you in the next video.